Hi, Chris. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hello, Julia. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. I'm happy to have you. I'm looking forward to our conversation and kind of getting even a little bit of a different perspective on what IHP means for maybe someone who isn't seeing, tons and tons of clients, but the purpose that it kind of serves the soul and, your life as far as passion's concerned. So I'm looking forward to our chat. What I would love to do to start is, could you share with our listeners a little bit about what you're currently doing with your IHP certification? Then we could talk about kind of how you got there and back it up a bit.
Sure. My name is Chris. I am a budding IHP certified practitioner, and I've gone through both levels, level 1 and level 2. And my business is in its early throes. I am working with clients, and it's one of the most incredibly satisfying experiences that one could go through. I myself went through a lot of health issues when I was younger and kind of thought this is how it was going to be. And that was very kind of debilitating and discouraging to my overall mindset. But finding IHP and be able to learn within that curriculum and see what is possible for individuals to achieve wellness, it's just so incredibly inspiring. And I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Yes. Yeah. I think we all, or I would say probably 95% of IHPs all share that passion of, I was here. Someone, whether it was a doctor, somebody of some sort of, authority told me that this is kind of like what you're going to be stuck with.
Sure.
They found answers. They found that there was hope, and you can't help but share it with other people, right? Because it's so contagious. The passion gets so contagious, and it sounds
Absolutely.
like that's, where you're at.
Yeah. You want to scream from the mountaintops.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about IHP is it gives you that ability to do so, especially now with social media. Somebody had said to me one time, because generally my posts are very, I don't want to say technical, but I almost show not much personality because I get caught in the technical, kind of going through labs and what it can do to an individual in terms of laying out a blueprint for them to get better. And I don't show my personality. But somebody had said to me once, he goes, at least you're saying something. And that actually kind of hit me, which was really cool, because sometimes there's a lot of fluff on social media, and I'm as guilty as that as the next person. But for somebody to tell me that you're actually saying something that's meaningful is nice to hear.
Yeah. Something of substance and, quality is important. Yeah. I have
sure.
conversations with my mentor clients all the time about that, how I find that it's easier for me to kind of show up if I'm using a little bit of my silly personality and maybe a reel or something more to entertain myself, right? Because
Sure.
It can just be but I'm then you go to my caption and it's all business, right? It gives you good information, and people want, they definitely want the substance. They want the information that you're sharing. And some people, we all share it in different ways because we're all individuals.
Of course.
And that's,
that lightheartedness that you give, Julia, with kind of letting people in from your personality and then giving that data below that gives people that guidance. That's the best of both worlds. Your welcoming personality and what you have to offer in terms of what the IHP curriculum gives people and has them, get well over working the process with a practitioner. It's such an incredible thing. And when you have that balance of both worlds, you can really draw people in. And I think I'm getting there. I think my most recent post that I did on chronic seasonal allergies, I think that kind of shows me as my most tuned in thus far compared to when I first started. So it's cool to see that progression. And the more you do and the more you get the message out there, the more relaxed you'll become and the more welcoming you'll be to people,
Yes. Yeah. And the truth is there's all sorts of people out there viewing our information that
Sure.
I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Somebody might look at some of my posts and be like, oh my God, is she dancing? give me a break. Whereas the serious people, right? Or, somebody who's just speaking on a little bit more of a formal format. And so we can't all be everybody, but somebody will resonate with you and find that the way that you're, if we're authentic, that's the most important thing, right? Not that we're trying to be all the things, but if we're authentically us and we're enjoying showing up, I think that always gets received really well on the other end.
I'm so glad you said that, because you were actually the first practitioner that I had worked with within Cabral's Wellness Institute at the time, back in 2019, to start my rehabilitation process. And I asked you, when I was actually not only working on my health, but why I would get into IHP. I remember asking you, I said, why would I become certified in the Integrative Health Practitionership when there's Dr. Cabral? Everybody's going to be going to Dr. Cabral. What do they need me for? And you basically said that was, we all as individuals have our own unique personalities and different way of talking to people. And we're going to hit a group of an audience that maybe Dr. Cabral wasn't able to hit, and vice versa. And it's really about creating as many of us as possible to get the information out there so that people can actually use the actionable data and achieve wellness rather than being beholden to, the standards of medical treatment to band-aid various symptoms that have been accruing over time. We're about improving quality of life. It's, for me, that's what this comes down to. And that's so inspiring. And I think we, as people, have this inherent nature of the ability to persevere when we meet a challenge. And a lot of time that perseverance is stunted when it comes to the chronic treatment of inflammation with the medical system, because we're often told, well, it's probably in your genes. You just need to take this medication, or you just need to go with this treatment, often leaving us with kind of this discouraging mentality where it's like we've been handed the short end of the stick and there's nothing we can do. And to me, that's a huge disservice. And I think that's where people like us come into to give people that sense of empowerment and the ability to meet a challenge and persevere.
Yes. Yeah. And I've talked about this so much on the podcast, but when your clients know that you've been there, right?
Sure.
Your story is that you were handed like sorry, this is just like what you have to deal with. Good luck. You met that with a different perspective. You went a different route. You got better. You made changes. You got inspired, and here you are. Like that's the inspiration, right? Yes, the clients need the lab work. Yes, they need the protocols, but knowing that they're sitting with somebody who's been there it's just our human nature, right? We want to be
Absolutely.
connected. We want to feel understood. We want to feel like somebody else gets it and is supporting us. And I think that that's, as IHPs, why we have so much success with clients in a way that the conventional model just doesn't, right? Was that some of your story? And you can share as kind of the details of it, kind of as much as you want or as little as you want, but you kind of obviously came to Equal Life at some point, running functional medicine labs. What was kind of your story leading up into the point where you decided to be an IHP?
Absolutely. I'm a Massachusetts boy. I grew up in Massachusetts and ultimately made the move to Southern California back in 2004 because I went to school for film and television. And I ultimately wanted to get into that lifestyle out there. To me, Hollywood and palm trees and the lights and the camera and the action to me was so exciting. And I went out there, and that's when I started to get involved with people who are really health conscious, kind of for the first time in my life. And at first I kind of snickered and laughed at them. I had never been around more vegetarians at the time in my life. And my ignorance started to come on full display, where I just wasn't hip. I was very much to me at the time, freedom represented getting in my car and pulling through the In-N-Out Burger or Burger King or whatever else. And to me, that was freedom. I had a delicious meal in my lap. I could drive. And, I was working in TV and all this. It was great. And then at some point, I was kind of unhappy with my overall physical health. And I started to kind of get that curiosity bug. And I started to look into things like, this was back in 05 and 06 when I was out there. So I was looking into the early stages of like chelation therapy and full body scans where we would be able to look for cancerous tumors and things like that. But there was always repercussions with those things like radiation and so forth. So I kind of stayed in that journey and that mentality. That actually started to become my passion out there, was that journey and finding how I could achieve wellness. Because unfortunately, there were so many conflicting like very well-regarded personalities out there, many of them doctors and all this. And sometimes the ego got in the way, and you would have somebody with a certain perspective and then somebody with much respect coming from another perspective, kind of poo-pooing somebody else's perspective. And so I was caught in this gauntlet of confusion, and I really didn't know what to do other than it seemed like plant-based eating was really like the way to really get started in terms of achieving optimal health. And I kind of became dogmatic about that. And I think I turned some people off in terms of my aggressive behavior, in terms of what people should be eating and how they should be living. And when I came upon Dr. Cabral by accident and what he talked about in the breadth and wealth of information and putting the ego aside and letting the bio-individualized data from lab work and all that and the actual science to back it up, let it kind of dictate what each individual person will go through in terms of their rehabilitation to achieve optimal wellness. And so that really spoke to me. And I've been on that journey ever since. And what IHP also has taught me too is to be a professional, which I wasn't when I was kind of in the dogmatic mindset of being, telling everybody how they should eat. Mm-hmm. And I think I've come a long way, and I owe that to IHP and Dr. Cabral and people like you, who is the first practitioner I worked with. And it's incredibly humbling in terms of the vast amount of information that we're given in this curriculum, that it to me, I was like, I wanted to crawl under a rock, and I was so shocked about how much I didn't know. Mm. And even though I know a whole heck of a lot more now, and I'm actually putting into practice, this is still ever evolving, and the body is so very complex, and that thirst for wanting to learn more, I don't think is ever going to go away. And me at 44 years old now, to actually come home from work, I actually do work at a brewery in the South Shore. I work at a warehouse. These are how most of my income comes in, as the income from being an IHP is building. I can't wait to get on the computer and continue with the curriculum, even outside of what Dr. Cabral gives us from his videos and such. He gives us so much more that if we want to, we can go down these rabbit holes, so we can really get entrenched in the physiology of the body and how it functions and all that. And I never thought, as a 44-year-old kid who grew up in a podunk town in Massachusetts, that I was going to be that person. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful to have that drive now that IHP has given me to want to learn more and to want to continue and improving my health as well, because you never really get to the end of the road. You can make great strides and you can achieve feeling the best that you ever have before. But as long as we're on this planet, and as long as we're in this environment that is becoming more and more toxic every day, it's incumbent upon us to be diligent so that we maintain that health.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I love the point you made about as far as like being an IHP and, coming home and after like working, long hours, like you want to get on the computer, right? But that's what passion does.
Sure.
And that is ultimately, again, I've said this on the podcast before, but if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right? So it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like you're forcefully investing in education in a business that you're, trying to get up and running, when you love what you do and you're passionate about it. And as you start to work more and more with clients, I have, my husband's in IT, and like he comes home and like I can literally just like see the drain on his face when I get up, when I leave my office.
Sure.
Unless somebody's looking for a snack, I have more energy than when I went in, because what I do actually like brings me joy and energy, that it fuels
absolutely
how you feel. And I think that so many IHPs would, agree in the sense that like the passion for the knowledge, for bringing it to other people. And I would argue that, you probably were so dogmatic because you didn't know as much, right? You were like, this is all I know. Plant
100%.
You got to eat plant-based, right? But then as you started to understand, well, like that person, might need fish, or as we start to become better educated, we become more flexible in our thinking, because like you have that ability to, access like, okay, well, I learned this about that. But when people become like very rigid in their thinking, it's only really because they only know that one thing, right?
Yeah.
So the more education we have, the more flexible in our thinking we can be, and the more individualized, plans we can make for clients, because everybody does need something a little bit different. Some people thrive on plant-based. Some people feel really terrible on plant-based,
Sure.
a plant-based diet. That's me. I mean, I I do need, like in red meat, like my body, I'm an O blood type. I love red meat. My body needs it. I crave it once, twice a week. Forget it. You'll never find me plant-based, right?
Gotcha.
But I know some people who feel amazing on plant-based. They have great energy. They don't miss anything. They actually detest the smell of red meat, right? But like
Sure.
that's your body saying like, this is what you need. This is what you don't need.
That's where the bio-individuality comes from. That's what we're taught. And I didn't know that. So, I would look at somebody funny that says, no, I don't like kale, or I can't have this, or I can't have that. And, I had that very rigid personality where I didn't accept anything other than that drive I had, which people need to stop eating red meat, say, and adopt more plant-based. And when it comes down to bio-individuality, some people may have, certain gut dysfunction that lends itself towards the fermentation of otherwise healthy foods, which can cause bloating and gas and nausea. I never would have understood that. In fact, I would have laughed at them like, you don't know what you're talking about, when in fact, it was me who didn't know what I was talking about. And so, again, that's going back to bio-individuality and what we learn in this IHP curriculum. And it's incredibly humbling. And I've certainly changed my personality. I listen to people now. And it's about working the process with them and meeting your clients where they're at. Sometimes, we take for granted because we're learning so much that the clients we work with are pretty privy to what we know. And they're not. And that's why they require the confidence and the guidance from us, not in an egotistical manner, but in a humbled fashion, letting, that's what I love about IHP 2. I remember questioning, because we're given so much in IHP 1, that I questioned, like, do I really need to run labs with people? I mean, I have so much that I can do here with people. So I was asking other IHPs, and like, no, it's truly game changing. So I'm so glad I took that leap into IHP 2, because with that lab work, that people who are willing to run lab work, you can really get more precise in terms of how you approach their rehabilitation through supplementation and various protocols, and the de-stress protocol ultimately. So, and it's truly integrative. And you work the process with them, you meet them where they're at, and they can make tremendous strides.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So with that, I would love to get your take on what do you find is like the most helpful lab package, or what do you tend to see as like the most beneficial approach to the labs with people that are just starting out, or maybe people that are more complex? How do you usually see that process shake out?
Sure. For me, it's come down to, I think the starter kit is incredibly comprehensive. And I think almost no matter what a person is going through, you can really make progress with the starter kit because it addresses so much. So I remember way back when I had a client who didn't run lab work through me, but had lab work done prior to meeting me through, was it Everlywell or these other places that they were looking at their hormones. And while I was able to kind of read through their labs and interpret it as such, or read it back to them and put on protocols since then, what I didn't realize is by doing that first, I really wasn't privy to what was becoming toxic and deficient in their body. And by running the starter kit, if somebody really wanted to work on hormones, say, when you're looking at, and you can actually see gut dysfunction in the form of bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, you're looking at your detoxification markers, you're looking at vitamin C, you're looking at various B vitamins, and with the minerals and metals test, you're looking at heavy metal accumulation, and you're looking to see where people's essential minerals are at, but not only where the levels are at, but if they're kind of in balance with one another. And having all that information, you can really make progress with somebody who's looking to fix their hormones. So I think it's one of the best places to start with. And short of doing that, I mean, there's such a great deal on the minerals and metals test right now. That can be a great gateway into, say, somebody who's looking to fix a whole host of issues. And then you can talk with the person. So short of running, say, the organic acids test that would be complementary to the minerals and metals, they may not have the money to do that. But in talking with them, I do experience bloating and gas, and I've had recurring athlete's foot and all these kind of symptoms that are indicative of yeast overgrowth or bacteria overgrowth, then you can run the protocol. And so I think it's looking at these biomarkers that are really helpful. I think the starter kit or the minerals and metals test by itself, or the organic acids test by itself is a great place to start.
Yeah.
And then if somebody down the line who starts to really feel better and really feel they made progress, then wants to look at how their hormones are functioning, then we can do that. And then we can adjust accordingly, make any necessary changes that we would need to.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I usually the hormones, right, are the hormone symptoms are the things that are screaming so loud
Sure.
that, especially for women, that like they finally come to the table, right? But that's not where it starts. And
Right.
we know that it starts way before that. And I completely agree that the starter kit really works on like what are the main toxicities, right? And what are the main deficiencies? How do we get the things up that aren't there that need to be? And how do we get rid of the stuff that's there that shouldn't be?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes some of the hormone stuff just shakes out on its own. And a lot of those symptoms seem to resolve. But like you said, okay, now you can go one step deeper and run the hormones. But rather than starting and looking at what the symptoms are, from a hormonal standpoint, if you back it up and get a lot of the more, root cause information to start, it can be so helpful.
Sure.
And the client, can then see that like this is a process. You've said a few times, like work the process. It is a process. And things don't just happen overnight. I find that sometimes that's the hardest thing to explain to people is that.
Well, that's because what we're indoctrinated in, right, is there's a pill for every ill. And then many of us I'm not naive to the fact that many of us, it's just easier to do that and to go on our merry way. But when we're not addressing these underlying root cause imbalances and they continue to accrue and manifest themselves in a myriad of ways, just not knowing that we have actionable data to make headway and nip inflammation in the bud, I think does a great disservice to us as people. So as long as people know that there's another alternative where they can improve quality of life, and it may take a little bit of work, but like anything that you earn, once you earn it, that feeling of satisfaction is unmatched. And ultimately what happens is you become an inspiration to those around you. They see the progress you're making, and you don't even need to say anything about it. They'll see it through your physical appearance. They'll see it in your eyes. They'll see it by the smile on your face and the kind of joy you're bringing to your everyday life. And they're going to say, what are you doing? And you'll be able to explain it. And so we all become a part of this movement, and it's really a force for good, this thing. And, being a part of IHP and understanding how the body works and what we can do to fix it. It's a great thing, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it's so important to understand how we live in a society really of instant gratification, of, like you said, a pill for every ill. And, everything is at our fingertips. I mean, my kids were just whining how hot it is. And like, oh, can you just get us like a little pool? They wanted like a blow up pool. And I like looked at my phone. I'm like, actually, Target could have one here by noon. No kidding. And then I was like, stop, don't do that. Like it, because then they literally think that things will just show up at the door.
Yeah.
And then the next time they want something, it'll be like, well, how come the last time we wanted a pool, it just showed up 45 minutes later?
Right.
And they don't need it. It's okay. There's a sprinkler, right? Like there's so much to be said for, the quote unquote simpler times of when we didn't expect things to change overnight. And it's not a wonder that usually people were healthier from like a foundational standpoint then, than we are now. Technology, it's amazing, right? It gives us the opportunity to connect like we are right now. There's so many things that are wonderful about it. But there's also, that we just get used to instant gratification. And okay, so my health is this, like, I don't feel good. Give me something to make this better fast, right? It's a societal, almost pattern that people need to understand that that's not how you truly get healthy. It's how you get rid of a symptom, but it's not how you change your health.
It's true. And that sets us up for a lot of highs and lows as well. I mean, looking for that instant gratification that we do get, but then we go through several bouts where we don't get to it. And that has an effect on our overall mental health and our neurotransmitter production. We could fall into depression and, kind of like this uncertainty where this constant gratification that we need. Sometimes it's important to go through a little bit of struggle and aversion and to kind of, as it comes down to, persevere through that. And that really shapes us as humans, and we become better equipped to deal with things when the stuff really goes down. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that's important. It's important for growth. It's important for autonomy. And yeah,
Confidence.
It's one of those things. Absolutely.
Yeah, remember that time where I was, X, Y, and Z, and I made it, right? Like it builds that confidence too in your ability to get through the next thing.
Absolutely. I had zero confidence growing up. I had tremendous anxiety. I had, I never had good posture. I was always pale. I had kind of wounds in my body that never went away. And I had no confidence whatsoever. And a lot of the times I would act out because of that lack of confidence. I often felt like I was under the microscope, that I was being looked at differently. And so that had a huge impact on my childhood and how I grew up as a person. But like I said, and that led to that kind of dogmatic thing. I felt like I was really getting behind something that was good. And I would, talk to people in a very condescending way that they needed to be doing what I was doing. And so, but I think a lot of that came from a lot of the trauma that I experienced as a child. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I am now. I do not have kids personally. So many people that I know do. And I wouldn't want a child who has such potential in this world to go through what I went through. I want to, show people that there is a better quality to life by addressing, these underlying root cause imbalances that ultimately go unaddressed by conventional medicine standards. And so that leads people in kind of an uncertain mindset for the future, leaving them with the, understanding that there's not much you can do, when in fact there is so much you can do, and it's never too late to build on your confidence. And the more you have as a foundation to build upon that confidence is, it's priceless.
Yeah, absolutely. And, amazing that you came from a place where, it's not like you were, super confident, you stumbled upon IHP, right? Like you came from a place where with, childhood trauma, like there's so much that we have to work through to get us to where we're at.
Yep.
But like we just said, it typically is, and I think it's that perspective of like, did this happen for me? Did it happen to me? It gets us to where we're going. And I always say like, nothing's a mistake. There's times where it's hard, but it's just a testament to the fact that you were open-minded, because not everybody does it, right? Not everybody gets to the point where you were at that crossroads of, okay, I can still stay dogmatic. I can think I'm right. I can like just be all, egotistical and stay on this road. Like you went that way, but not everybody goes this way. It's not an easy road to take. And that's something else that you can like bring to clients, right? Maybe at some point in the future, you work with somebody who you see that guy, right? It's somebody that was at that fork road like you were. And you can say like, listen, I've been there. Like you can put your shield down. You can like, we can do this. You can move to a place where life feels better and not so, you don't have to be so rigid in yourself. And, you'll never know I'm sure at some point it will kind of come up that you can help somebody with all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was first learning the curriculum in IHP1, I remember I had to suspend a lot of disbelief because what I was being taught wasn't in my mindset. So I really had to shift that mindset. And that was a little bit of a struggle for me. But like anything else, what you hope to do in your learning is to make progress. And that's all we can do as humans. We're not perfect. And a lot of the things that we go through in life shape us at a certain point in time, and it may not be our very best self. But as long as at some point we come to that recognition, like I've stepped outside a lot of myself lately, and I've looked back and I see how I acted among coworkers and other people. And I was a really difficult personality. And I had a lot of friends, don't get me wrong. But I know I also turned a lot of people off, as I said that before, and I'm still trying to make amends of that. But that's all we can do as people, as we learn and we grow and we try to inspire others and actually show that, that we can be quite humbled rather than arrogant. And, you, as they say, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And I'm really trying to make a lot more honey now than the constant vinegar that I was using way back when. Even though I clean with vinegar often, it's still very much a part of my life. But yeah, it's amazing. And I think it's just so important to get this information out there. One of the things that's hitting close to home for me right now is, you have young children who are exhibiting, the symptoms of ADD or ADHD. And then conventional medicine practices would be to put a child on some sort of pharmaceutical grade amphetamine, whether it's an Adderall or a Ritalin or whatever. And unfortunately, parents aren't told the long-term side effects, especially to a growing, developing child, the habitual use of these pharmaceutical grade amphetamines and what it can do to, the physicality of the growth of a child and brain development and all this. And it can lead to things like schizophrenia and depression. And it's like, we're not even addressing the biochemistry of the body, where we're looking at, does a child have gut dysfunction? Say, for instance, a child may have been born with copper toxicity, which may have been me, by the way, that was never addressed, which led to tantrums, anxiety, impulsive behavior, acting out. I couldn't really be around groups because I would just feel overwhelmed and I would act out. I couldn't focus. And if I had addressed my gut dysfunction when I was a child, I would have seen that I had tremendous yeast overgrowth, in my early stages of going through puberty and all that stuff. I'd open my mouth and I'd see all the stuff that had accrued in the back of my throat, like yeast overgrowth and all this kind of stuff. And I had chronic postnasal drip. I couldn't even speak to people face to face because I just felt like I didn't have the oral integrity to do so. Like, I was probably quite offensive and I had so much anxiety. And, what if I was deficient in vitamin B6, which is so important to transcribe and synthesize these various neurotransmitters? It's not just good enough to say boost dopamine when it has to be in balance with norepinephrine. What if I had Clostridia markers that were never addressed, which impedes on that transcription? So it's all these things that, if only the medical system, like I imagine, like what we do as IHPs, I imagine is what people ideally perceive the care that they would have gotten from their doctor, where it's intimate care. And if you have to do something that, because you have acute symptoms that requires pharmaceutical intervention or whatever, you can do that. But then ultimately, the doctor in a perfect world would say, I'm going to send you down to our integrative health practitioner. And what we're going to do is we're going to run lab work and we're going to look at all these biomarkers and see if your child is deficient in these various things that are driving to a diagnosis of ADD or ADHD. And that gives a parent's confidence that they actually have actionable data to improve the quality of life as a child. But unfortunately, the way things are set up, we pay into insurance. And then if we have issues, what insurance provides us is the habitual use of pharmaceutical drugs with no other option or understanding of what's going on. So, and as a child, say I was born with copper toxicity, and which can lead to recurring infections, that comes with the administering of antibiotics. So then you have a child who has a growing, developing microbiome that's become completely, compromised because of antibiotics to treat symptoms. I'm not saying there isn't a time and place for that, but if once taken a heavy dose of antibiotics, not understanding how we need to rehabilitate the gut so that there isn't yeast proliferation and all the compounds that can be made from it that can spill into a compromised gut lining, into the vascular superhighway, causing neurotransmitter dysfunction in this, how are we going to make any headway? And I think that's so important for us to convey to clients, is we have this actionable data through lab work to really make headway and improve quality of life, especially to a growing, developing child. And I think when we're solely giving pharmaceutical drugs, again, not the parent's fault, how are we supposed to know otherwise? The doctors are considered mainstream, so anything outside of that is quackery. And it's unfortunate because we could really make strides in helping a child grow to be a really functioning individual that can contribute greatly to society rather than become a burden because of the unfortunate accumulation of various things that were never addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And in my fantasy world, the doctor would say, I'm going to send you downstairs to the integrative health practitioner and we're going to change the child's diet. And then we'll run
Right.
right? Because like the stuff the gluten sprayed with pesticides, dairy causing, more inflammation, neuroinflammation. But all of the chemicals that are in food, you need like the dyes, all of that. I can see kids literally change before my eyes.
Just by changing the diet.
Yeah. Just in weeks. But I can even see like other kids that I know, my own kids, like they know that I'm a stickler about dye. And every now and then they'll just wear me down and it's baseball season and all the kids are getting slush. And I'll say, you can get a slush. You know what the slush does. You know what the slush does to your brain. I have an 8-year-old. You know what it does, how it makes your body feel. You might not be able to feel like you can control your words, like you can control your body, like you can control and act the way that you should. I said, and then mom's going to probably get frustrated if you're, using your hands with your sister or what have you, right? And sometimes he makes the choice to get the slush and I'm going to let him every now and then because like I want him to choose. But what he's doing now is every now and then he doesn't get the slush or he'll get it and eat half of it and he'll start to like be like, I don't really feel that great. And he stops and throws it away.
Yep.
Because that alone, just dyes. I take dye and gluten out of kids' diets, ADD, ADHD, I would say 65% resolves, right? And then sure, there's copper toxicity and gut-based stuff. But if doctors just had basic functional holistic nutrition training, right? We'd be doing a heck of a lot better. But they don't even ask like what kids are eating. They don't ask those questions. When I take my kids to the pediatrician, they have the government chart and they ask my kids if they're eating fruits and vegetables and that's it. And quite frankly, all my kids, they'll lie, right? Your kids will lie.
Of course. Well, it can be very intimidating in a doctor's office. It really can. And many people don't speak up because especially with my parents' generation and being raised Catholic and all that, like they consider doctors to be descendants from heaven. There's no accident that they're wearing the white smocks, right? And doctors are brilliant people. They go through so much before they can even get into practice. And they're so they're so well equipped to handle emergency situations, but they're beholden because the pharmaceuticals and the way insurance companies are set up who pay for these pharmaceuticals, it's really to diagnose and prescribe, and we'll see whatever progresses. And if we need to go through more medications, these brilliant doctors, they really have a limit on what they can do in their practices because of the stranglehold that big pharma has over the industry. So as long as at some point we go down the road where these different systems, the IHP system, the medical system, and the like kind of start to acknowledge one another and promote one another is where we can really make tremendous headway in people's health, because people really take what a doctor says to heart. And if a doctor says like, listen, while we're doing this, I'm going to direct you to this person, people will listen. And, Dr. Cabral talks about how hopefully this is the future of medicine or how we practice health in this country. And I hope it gets there sooner rather than later, for the sake of us as people.
Yeah. And the next generation. I agree. If
I may say real quick, and I apologize to interrupt you. When I grew up, I ate nothing but dye. Blueberry cereal and Count Chocula and Charleston Chews and Cracker Jack. I don't think I ate really real food until we sat down and my mother gave us a steak and a salad. So that was constant. And knowing like what I know now and have run my own lab tests on myself, I had so many things going on that were never addressed. And then when I'm piling processed foods on top of that, it's just a recipe for disaster. It really is.
Yeah.
So, And then working back that process where, I may only run the minerals and metals test with a client to start or the starter kit as a whole. But when you're working the process and they're going along and they're getting results, and then you're able to say, hey, you know what? What do you think about running an IgG food sensitivity test? that's still contributing to inflammation that we really haven't taken care yet. Or if not, we can do the anti-inflammatory diet program where we're eliminating well-known, foods that cause inflammation in most people. So you can really work the process, and you can really dial back what is considered the biological age, right? We're not going to stop the chronological age. We get older every year, but how we age and the severity of how we age is largely dependent on, what is going into our body, what is in excess that is impeding on the overall process of the body, and what are we deficient in that the body needs in order to be able to restore function. And, it's working that process and working and learning with your client and going through, and you really both come out on the end a better person.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. If people are listening and they're just loving your passion and knowledge, where can they find more about you, all the places that you show up, website, social media, all that good stuff?
Sure. I have most of my content right now on Instagram and Facebook. So Chris John Tracy is my name. Light the Way Wellness is my business. I chose Light the Way Wellness. It's kind of pretentious, but I lived in Scituate for 9 years, and very much a part of the heritage of Scituate is the lighthouse. And, for people out there in the sea who are looking to find their way back into land, the lighthouse is a big part of that. It gives us that guiding light that we need in order to get to safety. And I kind of figured that, I might as well use it in my practice, because it's that guidance that we need to get us back to homeostasis or dynamic equilibrium that we may have never been in, because unfortunately, many of us have been born with such deficits that never get addressed, and we're never able to climb our way out of that hell. But, with this program and the, at-home health tests that you can run that provide a functional medicine approach to rehabilitation, I mean, that's where it's at, in conjunction with your medical care. We all need doctors. There's no question. They are the best at acute care. They keep us alive when crisis hits. But if we want to understand why that crisis happened and look deep into our physiology, we need to do that with at-home functional medicine health tests. And it's such a cool thing to be able to provide that in a practice. And, this IHP community has given me a lot of confidence, a lot of drive. I'm inspired by other IHPs. The content that they're putting out makes me feel like I have to step up my game sometimes. But we all inspire one another. And like I said, I really feel that this is a force for good. And I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Yes. Yeah. Force for good is an understatement. We're all in part of a movement. That's for sure.
Really, really true.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. This is such a wonderful interview. I love when past clients of mine end up on here. It's like a full circle moment, right? You ran labs, I was your coach, you got better, you became an IHP, and here you are.
It's a dream come true. I was very excited for today, and it has exceeded my expectations. And I thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. We'll be in touch. Thanks, Chris.
Okay.